This podcast is intended for a mature audience over 19 years of age and is provided on an educational and informational basis. Any material presented is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as a substitute for professional medical advice or as an endorsement or medical claim by Everything Podcast or Ripco.pro.
Ross Rebagliati.
Ross is looking good right now.
And he's not holding
left
back.
to go. He's fighting it right now for all it's worth. It's carve or starve for Ross right now.
He's in first place. Ross Rebagliati, Canada. 72 hours after Ross's gold medal run.
Ross Rebagliati has tested positive for passive marijuana.
Forced to forfeit his gold medal.
Returned the medal and diploma awarded to the athlete Rebagliati.
They put me in jail in Japan.
Overturned. He did get the medal back.
I just wanted to take the control back again. Let's turn this mess into a success. I'd love if we could be part of normalizing cannabis use and to also stand up for the people who use cannabis. It's personal. I'm Ross Rebagliati, and this is the Potcast.
Welcome to the Potcast with Ross Rebagliati, where we explore the world of cannabis through the eyes of one of the world's premier cannabis advocates.
I've been at the forefront of cannabis awareness for over 25 years, since that fateful day in Nagano. Join me as we dig deep for gold nuggets hidden in the wide world of weed. It's growers, producers, innovators, and enthusiasts. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and keep the podcast in your rotation.
On this episode of the podcast, we're exploring one of the world's oldest love stories. Two star-crossed lovers who both know what it's like to live in the shadows. But when they meet under the covers, their chemistry is undeniable. We're talking about the passionate relationship between cannabis and sex. It's a story that began thousands of years ago and has been evolving ever since. And even though the topic is still somewhat taboo, there are folks out there working to normalize the discussion around the strong connection between cannabis and sex. We'll hear from Dr. Suzanne Mulvehill, a clinical sexologist and orgasmologist, on a very important mission.
I did a study for my dissertation to evaluate women who were using cannabis prior to partnered sex. It was clearly evident that women who had orgasm difficulty almost never orgasmed without cannabis and almost always orgasmed with it. When I saw that show up, when I organized the data and saw like, oh my God, we're onto something.
And a little later, Ross chats with Shahbaaz Kara-Virani, ambassador for Proofly, a Canadian company making cannabis topicals formulated with CBD for use in the bedroom.
We as a society, I don't feel mainstream talk about like sex and orgasms. It's so taboo to even like have that conversation. So anyways, it's just, I'm excited to mix these two together because they go hand in hand, obviously.
I'm Don Schaefer.
And I'm Ross Rebagliati, and this is the Potcast.
This episode was inspired by the Black Diamond Stick by Ross's Gold. Infuse your joint or pre-roll with extra THC without it clogging or canoeing like other infused pre-rolls. Just insert the Black Diamond Stick in the middle of your joint or pre-roll, spark it, and you're good to go. Ask your favorite bud tender for the Black Diamond Stick by Ross's Gold or visit herbaldispatch.com. Must be 19 plus. And now for the pot news. To address the lack of research on the sexual benefits of cannabis use, a study was published in the January 2023 edition of the Journal of Cannabis Research, examining the influence of cannabis on sexual function and satisfaction. Data was collected with an online survey from a self-selected sample of adults who had reported previous cannabis use. The final sample included 811 participants, ranging from 18 to 85 years old, with most reporting being in a monogamous sexual relationship. Overall, study results indicated that both men and women perceived the cannabis use increased their sexual functioning and satisfaction, particularly increasing desire and orgasm intensity. Medical implications of this study include the possible use of cannabis for treating sexual dysfunctions, especially for women. On a related note, up to 41% of women face challenges achieving orgasm, a statistic that has not changed for 50 years. Our podcast guest today, Dr. Suzanne Mulvehill, published her study in Sexual Medicine's April 2024 issue, in which she assessed the effect of cannabis use on women experiencing such challenges. Out of 410 valid and complete surveys collected in the study, 72% of participants who experienced orgasm difficulty reported that cannabis increased orgasm frequency. 67% stated that it improved orgasm satisfaction, and 71% indicated that cannabis use made orgasm easier. This groundbreaking study fuels Dr. Mulvehill's ongoing efforts to petition U.S. states to recognize cannabis as an approved medical treatment for female orgasm difficulty. We'll hear more about that in just a moment. Although most scientific research on the relationship between cannabis and sexual pleasure has emerged only in the last few decades, evidence of cannabis use to aid in both the mental and physical aspects of sex has been noted throughout history. According to Women in Cannabis, cannabis was used in ancient India from the 7th century onward as an aid in sexual pleasure and enlightenment in tantric rituals. It's also referred to as an ingredient in various Ayurvedic recipes for pain relievers and aphrodisiacs. In ancient Egypt, women reportedly applied a mixture of groundweed and honey to help ease the pain of childbirth. And more recently in Russia in the 1930s, young brides applied a mixture of lamb's fat and cannabis to make consummation of their wedding night more comfortable, while also enjoying the plant's aphrodisiac effects. With cannabis becoming legal in more regions around the globe, open discussions about its benefits for sexual activities or otherwise are slowly coming to the surface. But put the two taboo subjects together, and the conversation is still just a whisper. Even the late American astronomer and planetary scientist, Carl Sagan, was afraid to talk about his fondness for the plant and its physical pleasures, writing the following love letter to weed under the pseudonym Mr. X. Cannabis also enhances the enjoyment of sex. On the one hand, it gives an exquisite sensitivity. The actual duration of orgasm seems to lengthen greatly, but this may be the usual experience of time expansion, which comes with cannabis smoking.
Here at the Potcast, we like to use our platform to support the normalization of cannabis and all its diverse uses. So we reached out to a researcher in the United States, not only working hard to uncover scientific evidence of the connection between cannabis and sexual enjoyment, but also to normalize an important topic we don't often hear about.
You've reached the age where giving up isn't who you are, so why let erectile dysfunction get in your way?
We've all seen the commercials for treatments of the sexual difficulties men experience. But what about solutions for the 41% of women who face similar challenges? The Women's Cannabis Project might be the way.
My name is Dr. Suzanne Mulvehill. I'm a clinical sexologist and orgasmologist, and I work on public policy to get female orgasmic disorder added as a condition of treatment with medical cannabis.
Dr. Mulvehill founded the Women's Cannabis Project in 2020 to educate elected officials in the U.S. and get them on board with their mission, with help from local advocates with stories similar to her own.
As someone who was really against cannabis for decades and also suffered from this female orgasmic issue, having seen 4 sex therapists over 30 plus years and trying different treatment modalities, it was cannabis that I agreed to just try. And to my own surprise, that is what I would say freed me, healed me of this, not just the issue itself, but the feelings that come along with it, feelings of inadequacy, feelings of shame, feelings of brokenness. All of that was healed. And I just wanted to see, is this working for other women too? And if so, how can we take it out of the shame box and the stigmatized box and put it into something that's normalized? So that's what I've been working on since 2020.
For Dr. Mulvehill, this work is not just about helping more women experience pleasure, which is important, of course. It's about much more than that. According to research cited on her website, orgasm difficulty has well-known links to mental health issues, PTSD, depressive disorders, anxiety disorders, and other physical problems.
We hear about it with men, mainly with erectile dysfunction. The Veterans Administration has spent thousands and thousands of dollars helping vets with ED. And we're hoping to bring more awareness to FOD because it's about women's health. It's not just about orgasm. Women with orgasm difficulty have more mental health issues, more mental health diagnoses, more prescription drug use. So we're working on helping women get healthy.
As mentioned earlier in the Pot News, Dr. Mulvehill's research in early 2024 revealed a compelling connection between cannabis use and a more enjoyable sexual experience for women on many levels.
What we found was that there was statistical evidence in cannabis improving orgasm frequency, orgasm ease, and orgasm satisfaction. Those were the three subscale questions. They're called subscale questions of what's called the female sexual function index. I mean, it's getting kind of into the scientific aspects of a validated survey, and we use the orgasm questions from that survey with and without cannabis. It was clearly evident that the largest group of women who had orgasm difficulty almost never orgasmed without cannabis and almost always orgasmed with it. When I saw that show up, when I organized the data and saw like, oh my God, we're onto something. It was just fascinating because then I interviewed women as well. And the stories that I was told, one woman had shared that she had been raped as a teenager and she could not orgasm, period. Not during masturbation, not with the partners. And she told her partner, listen, I have this problem. And he basically said, try this. And he gave her a hit of cannabis. She orgasmed the first time. She used it, and it gives me the chills to this day to say that. It's something to be used with a lot of consciousness, with a lot of intention, and in a sense of honor and respect that something as powerful as this can actually help a woman overcome such traumatic life situations. I would even call that like a miracle, that someone like in that situation and in my own situation, like that's what prompted me to do this work. Are there other women out there that have suffered and are struggling with the prefrontal cortex, basically?
So why does cannabis work so well for women?
A couple of reasons come to mind. One is a theory, the altered state of consciousness theory. So I created 4 theories that got published, and women's orgasm has been defined as an altered state of consciousness, where men's has not been stated that way in the professional journals per se. Now, I will also say that there's no one agreed upon definition for male or female orgasm. There are multiple definitions, but one that was agreed upon in Paris at a sexual meeting back in like the early 2000s, the one line was that it creates an altered state, that orgasm is an altered state of consciousness for women. Cannabis, we know, the THC in cannabis creates an altered state of consciousness. So my theory is women who learn how to surrender to an altered state of consciousness can learn how to experience orgasm. And that was my experience because I had a very difficult time surrendering.
So far, Dr. Mulvehill has had some success with the Women's Cannabis Project with her recently published and ongoing research, and she's making slow and steady progress on getting U.S. states to approve the treatment. But there's still a mountain of work to be done.
The advocacy is try to get a country on board next that might like to add female orgasmic disorder as a condition of treatment with medical cannabis. Maybe Canada, maybe Australia. That whole advocacy line is continuing. We petitioned 11 states in 2024. 5 of them denied it and 2 approved it, and 3 haven't yet acknowledged that we submitted the petition. So we'll continue with that advocacy along that line. And some additional research. We have a journal article. My research partner and I wrote a journal article, and it's been peer reviewed by one journal, and we're going to be resubmitting that in this next 6 months. I mean, look at how many commercials there are for ED. There aren't any really for female sexual dysfunction because we don't think that way. I was an elected official for 4 years, and I worked on a political action committee in Florida for 10 years, helping change land use. But I know the navigation of law change, and it kind of goes with that line, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You have to take it one step at a time.
To learn more about Dr. Mulvehill's work and how you can support the mission of the Women's Cannabis Project, visit womencp.org. Now it's time to switch positions. We mentioned earlier that historical cannabis use for sexual purposes included some interesting topical applications. So Ross reached out to someone working with Proofly, a Canadian company that makes a line of topical cannabis products formulated to provide relaxation and muscle and joint pain relief for a variety of physical activities. Their products are not so much used to alter one's state of consciousness, but for their other performance-enhancing qualities.
My name is Shahbaaz Kara-Virani. I live between Toronto and New York City. I've been in the cannabis industry for the last 7 years in a variety of different roles. I was a former founder of the Canadian beach soccer team. I grew up playing soccer. My dad was a professional cricket player growing up, so sports has been in my family, and I have a particular affinity towards cannabis as a performance enhancer, as a recovery tool, as a wellness piece, because, you know, we live in a society that really promotes alcohol and cigarettes and all these bad things. And so I've made it my life's goal to change the stigma and really drive a lot of education in this industry.
Sounds like Ross and Shahbaaz might have a few things in common.
I want to touch on that, what you mentioned about the performance enhancement of cannabis, and I have my own views on that, but how do you see it being performance enhancing?
You know, it's interesting because cannabis is this crazy thing that works with your cannabinoid receptors and things like that. For me, specifically, subjectively, it is really about getting in the right frame of mind for the thing that you're about to do. I think it helps me just lock in and appreciate the moment. So for me, that's performance enhancement.
Well, I concur. I'm on the same page. I first started talking about performance enhancement from cannabis 20 years ago, when that was a really profound statement to make.
Hold on a second, guys. Are we still talking about sports or something else?
For me, it was all about dialing into my equipment the best that I could.
I'm still not quite clear.
I would move my bindings a half a degree here, or tighten my boots up a little bit there, depending on the temperature and stuff like that. And I found that cannabis really helped me tune into how my equipment felt and if it was working in those conditions.
Ah, yes. Okay. Sports. Now back to the topicals at hand.
Proofly is amazing because it's not your traditional understanding of what cannabis is. So I go back to my parents being East African and Kenyan. When they think about cannabis, they think about cannabis rolled up, right? When they immigrated to Canada, I don't think they ever saw their son working in the cannabis industry, I'll tell you that much. But I started to learn about Proofly, and I started to learn about some of their products. They have this full spectrum topical, and it's CBG, CBD, I believe, and THC. I've been working with them for the last 2.5 years. They have a variety of amazing products. They just came out with daytime gummies as well. I'm huge on daytime stuff. Daytime workouts, daytime yoga, daytime sex, right? That's my favorite type of sex.
But if you get all those things together, you're going to sleep better at night anyway.
Can I interrupt you guys for a little CBD talk? Proofly makes 2 intimate products, warming CBD massage oil and water-based CBD lubricant. You can probably guess why a warming massage oil would be enjoyable. And most adults know what lubricant does. But what about the CBD factor? The cannabinoid known as CBD is not psychoactive like THC, but research suggests it may help relax muscles, reduce inflammation, and relieve pain, which is why it's a common ingredient in topicals formulated for muscles and joints. In addition to relaxation and pain relief, supporting an enjoyable sexual experience, CBD may also help increase blood flow to reproductive organs and sexual tissue due to the abundance of cannabinoid receptors in those areas. The more you know. And now for the question on everyone's mind. With such compelling connections between cannabis and sexual enhancement, why don't we see more cannabis products in Canada geared toward use in the bedroom? Are consumers even aware of them?
Proofly has their lubricant, their oil, which is fantastic. But I think it's because of a couple factors. So I think the way in which recreational retail is rolled out in Canada vis-a-vis the medical channel. So when you go into the medical channel, you're trying, like we talked about, pain relief, these types of things. I think recreational cannabis has a negative stigma associated with it, right? Even my mom sometimes will put on a cream. She was putting on the Proofly Balm the other day, CBD Balm. She's like, am I going to get high? I'm like, no. But there's no way to get education on that for her. And so if there's no education, then you have these retail stores and the stigma associated with recreational cannabis, you're not going into that store to find cosmetics or find lube or find pieces. You're not thinking like that because the advertising's tough. And unless you're in that store or you know someone in the industry, it's like, you're not going in there. There's all these other stores to go into, La Vie en Rose or Sephora or whatever. I don't know, is that a lingerie store or something? There's no conditioned consumer understanding of how to actually purchase that, right? And so the path to purchase is opaque, and that makes it really, really challenging. And then you mix it with the marketing advertising regulations and not being able to drive traditional kind of marketing and advertising through those channels like Facebook, Instagram, and things like that. So I think it's a frontier that needs to be popped right open, because being a little high or being a little relaxed or whatever the case is, whatever you're seeking, or even if you're looking to use lube or a more natural, alternative or whatever the case is, and from CBD, THC, etc., sex is just better when you're a little stoned. At least for me, I appreciate it more. Maybe you're more playful. You're discovering a little bit more.
I'm finding the edibles in particular are banger for the bed. Snuggling up with your wife after a long day and leaving that stress behind. You take a little edible and 15 minutes later you're all cozy again, and the stress of the day and whatever arguments you had with your wife kind of just drift away, and then the pillows are cozy, the blankets are warm, and the next thing you know, bada boom, bada bing, everyone's feeling good.
There you go. And I think we live in a world where there's a lot of dopamine hits. You have Instagram, you have this, you have all these things happening. And then we live in a world that's hyper.
All the bells and whistles.
Yeah, exactly. Hyper fast. You're getting information from everywhere. And so to your point, Ross, it really just allows you to kind of reconnect with your partner a little bit differently and realign. So, once that happens, the magic, the fireworks are going up, right? It's tough otherwise kind of thing. But just even in the bedroom in terms of that feel, that taste, that touch kind of thing, it's heightened for sure in different ways. But the challenge often is if you find a product, sometimes because of the way the industry is set up, you might not know where to go to find that product. It's not like you can just go on Amazon and search hey, Proofly topicals, right? And so it really requires the brand to go and understand exactly who's selling their product. And so sometimes if I find a product I really like, it's not as easy as, hey, just go to Walmart. So it's a very convoluted buying experience. And I think that's something as an industry we can work on.
We got to deregulate a little bit too and start allowing the advertising for these natural plant-based products and stop the ridiculousness on all the red tape that's involved in being part of the cannabis industry, and having the ability to let people know about what's going on in mainstream media.
I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, we as a society, I don't feel mainstream talk about sex and orgasms. It's so taboo to even have that conversation. So anyways, it's just, I'm excited to mix these two together because they go hand in hand, obviously. I'm seeing the mindset change and normalizing. Change management doesn't just happen tomorrow. It's you got to normalize it. And I love this quote. It's to change the city, you got to sweep your front steps first, right? So I'm trying to sweep my steps so that it hopefully, echoes and changes and evolves the city kind of thing.
Thanks to Shahbaaz Kara-Virani from Proofly for joining us today on the podcast and helping to raise awareness about the undeniable connection between cannabis and sex. You can learn more about Proofly's intimate topicals at proofly.ca. Whether you're curious about trying cannabis for medical reasons or recreational performance enhancement, it's nice to know people like Dr. Mulvehill and Shahbaaz are working to bring this relationship out from underneath the covers. Perhaps if we keep talking about cannabis and sex without shame, we can fight the stigma and help everyone add a little more pleasure to their lives. This episode was inspired by the Black Diamond Stick by Ross's Gold, the easy way to infuse your joint or pre-roll with extra THC. Ask your favorite bud tender for it or visit herbaldispatch.com. Must be 19 plus. Join us for the next episode of the podcast, where we'll be chatting with folks on the front lines of the budding cannabis tourism industry. From farm gate stores to tours that take you to the hottest cannabis-friendly spots, you're in for a ride. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss it. The Potcast with Ross Rebagliati is an Everything Podcast production. The opinions expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the views of the podcast team or our partners. The show is intended for a 19-plus audience. Thanks to our host, Ross Rebagliati, our showrunner and writer, Jessica Graychick, And our sound engineer is John Massacre. I'm Don Schaefer. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Another Everything Podcast production. Visit everythingpodcast.com, a division of Pattison Media. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast.